Vadi, which was famous for its congestion and lack of services. And then if you've ever seen the movie Slumdog Millionaire, one of the little kids that was raised in the ghetto comes and makes a kind of India's Got Talent show, and he wins $1 million. But then he doesn't want to leave his home because that's where the family is, that's where all his friends are. He's the richest boy in the slum, but he returns. It's a wonderful movie. Maybe we'll get to see it on board. But the family life and the intensity of the relations of the neighborhoods and the people is really quite something to see, mixed with shows of wealth and then utter poverty. There are still so many poor people, not just all over India, but in Bombay, particularly coming in. And then when they're there, they have some access to education, and that makes all the difference, as we know. So many poor come in, and they, within a couple of generations, because of Bombay or Mumbai, the economy, and it rewards the ambitious and the hard-working. And one of the great issues of India is the independence of women to get their own economic life going, their own bank accounts, microloans to start their own business. Now, it's a complicated subject, but the Indian government has embraced the, let's say, the global movement to allow women to run their own lives and not be chattel to just their husbands. And so you'll see that in Mumbai, a lot of them have become independent, fashionable professionals like you see anywhere else in the world now. And that may make a great difference in the future of the economy. But it's also matched by current controversy, which is the Indian national government has banned ultrasounds, so they don't allow gender selection of births, but it goes on anyway. And in some hospitals in parts of India, they have 2 boys for every 1 girl. And so that is a tradition that the families always want to have boys, because the girls, you have to have a dowry to sell them essentially to another family. But that's a great change that's going on now. It's still a controversy. I'm going to show you a bit of an unusual people that live in Mumbai. This is the Parsi, and they were driven out of Persia in the 7th century by the Islamic forces that came and drove them out, and they are Zoroastrians. And they came to Mumbai back over 1,000 years ago to set up their own town, and there are only about 80,000 of them, so they're a drop in the bucket of the city, but they've maintained their Persian, ancient Persian language, and they're known especially for their abilities in trading and finance, so they're actually become quite wealthy and often run different banks or other institutions in Mumbai. And their tradition is very strong. I happen to know some of them, and they're very educated and friendly people, but they keep separate from all of the Hindus and the Muslims. And I don't know if you know this religious tradition because it's fairly minor in the modern world, but Zoroaster, over 3,000 years ago, was the first prophet who said that there is only one God. So he's the founder of monotheism, of which Judaism, Christianity, Islam have come out. And his symbol is always this halo, which is the grace of the one God. And that has persisted into Christianity, certainly. And it's a tradition that's taught to the children to this day, certain purifications and discipline and the need to be educated and to work, and these kind of ethical standards come out of Zoroastrianism in ancient times. This is the one temple that's in central Bombay. And it is on the center, it's circular, and in the center of the temple they have a fire. And Zoroastrianism has been called fire worship because they consider that the symbol of the active spirit of the world. And so in every Zoroastrian temple they have a fire that they keep burning, and the one in this temple dates from the one in somewhere in Iran. It's been burning for 1,500 years or something. And it's curious because where I live in Hudson Valley of New York, there's the only Zoroastrian temple in all of North America, and the Parsi, the community that lives spread around, they built a temple, and then they brought the fire from this temple burning in an urn, got a special chartered plane from Air India, flew it all the way to New York, carried it up in an ambulance burning so that they could start their temple in New York State. So that's their interesting tradition. The other one is that they have a burial tradition of giving a the deceased to what they call sky burial. And this is a temple that is in the Malabar Hill of Bombay that is now surrounded by high-rises. And originally it was outside of the city, and the feature of it is the deceased is placed after anointment and cleansing in the center of this temple, and then they call the birds down, and the birds within a few minutes devour the body and take and fly away. And that's considered the most honorific way to pass on to the next world. And so this was the subject of quite a bit of interest in Mumbai when the Europeans first came. And it's closed to the public, as are the temples, but they have a sketch of it as it is. Now it is abandoned because one photographer got up on a new high-rise and he took photos of the sacred ceremony and published them in a magazine. And that was considered so sacrilegious that the Parsis moved their temple out of the city. But then lately, the problem is the vultures have been dying off. There's a vulture disease that came from an antibiotic they were giving cattle, and that decimated the vulture population down to about 1% of what it used to be over all of India. Now the Indian government banned that particular veterinarial medicine to save the last few vultures. And so now it's a tradition that's pretty much passed, and they're cremating now, I read. Well, anyway, that's the very ancient, and right near this Temple of Silence is a science center named after Nehru, and it's in an area with art galleries. Here's the Changir Art Gallery. There's modernism is crowding out the last vestiges of some of the old lifestyles here. And then there's a large middle class that is developing in not just Mumbai, but all the other cities of India. So this is what they want. They want a healthy, well-plumbed house and cars. And so it's a lot of India, if you go out of the cities, they become, I call a California suburb, which is automobile-based and out of town in a way, but healthier for the raising of a family. And then the other thing that you may have heard quite a bit about is Bollywood. Now, this is Mumbai's biggest entertainment industry. They produce a few hundred of these musical comedies and different shows every year. And if you have a chance to see them, they're pretty rollicking, I'd call them. They have big dance numbers, almost like Busby Berkeley has come back in an Indian style. And they're very popular, and now they've actually sent them around the world, and the movie stars out of Mumbai are famous far and wide. So I know there's a tour in the evening. That's, of course, a nice cooler time to go out. You'll see the people lining up for the cinemas and the clubs and all that. So especially in the summer, this city is so muggy that people go out at night. Often the youth stay out all night. I don't think we're going to do that. But anyway, there's a lot of places to see. This is the Brabourne Stadium up near the Malabar Hills. And again, the whole city is just mushrooming with condominiums and modern facilities. So here's the Shivaji Airport and the Stock Exchange, which is the new temple here. It's the largest in India. And now they're building high-speed trains to Delhi and other cities, Mangalore. And so we're at a point watching India sort of morph into a modern technological society like China has in other parts of the world. And this is the newest, biggest transportation feature, the Bundawali Sea Link, which goes on to the east side of the downtown to the mainland. And so that's, again, a modern symbol for the development of the country and connecting places that otherwise had been difficult to get to. In that regard, you may have seen that movie last night, the railroad movie. That was quite revealing in many places. I'd seen it before, but now that's being matched by a development of highways. And so this is the project to have the golden quadrilateral to connect the north across into the south and east. And there's a green line right through the center of the country, which is unusual because that's very mountainous and very remote. But when this is all finally completed, it's like the interstate system or the Autobahn, wherever you go, it suddenly makes travel so much easier for everybody. Particularly compared to those crowded trains. So now people have cars, and they're becoming a motorized automaniac society like some places. But they will go right through the countryside. So you see scenes like this where the ancient and the new transport are suddenly in conflict. And you may know that cows are sacred to the Hindus. So if a cow sits down in the middle of the road, you have to go around it. Try that in LA. And they have a whole new trucker culture, these guys who drive trucks for endlessly around the country. So it's, again, a modern development, for better and for worse, perhaps. Now I'm going to talk about Goa. This is, again, the smallest state of all of India, formerly a Portuguese colony, and then forcibly joined into the Indian national government in 1961. And I believe Philip is talking about the Portuguese Empire in particular, because as the first of the European colonial powers, it's also the last one, the last Portuguese colony being Macau, which was just given back in 1999 to the Chinese nation. Well, anyway, again, the culture here goes way back. These are prehistoric petroglyphs. That a lot of these sites all over India, archaeology goes back 5, 10, 100,000 years. They really don't know. This is in a place called Uskalamal. And curiously, the petroglyph on the right looks like it's a camel back when they had horns. And here's some of the coinage found in Goa of a previous empire in a language we don't know what it is. And again, like in the Mumbai area, you go across a plain, you come up into the Ghats, and so there are these tremendous, mostly sandstone mountains that rise up and precipitate water. It comes down to water all the fields. They also mine a lot of iron in this particular state, in Goa. Those are trains coming down to the port where we will dock. A lot of the countryside is getting to be very tropical and lush, so it sort of looks somewhat like backcountry in Indonesia or other tropical countries, with a lot of rice paddies and different agriculture. And then the shore. Now this is what we'll see, because this whole area of Goa is famous for its beautiful beaches. And so it became a tourist destination back in the 1960s, and particularly for the youth would go and just camp out on the beach. It was out of the city, clean and not crowded, and it still is that way, though there's, again, some economic development. But it's still considered a resort and a holiday area. And that's why the Portuguese came here to vacation. Well, not really. They came to trade. So this is 1507 was the founding of Goa as a Portuguese trading colony. It was originally visited by Vasco da Gama in 1498, and he continued down the Malabar coast to Calicut and Cochin. But this is the founder of Goa as it is today, Alfonso de Albuquerque, who was the Portuguese military commander for the East Asia. So he came with his armaments and built the forts. And my hometown of birth, Albuquerque, New Mexico, is named after him. But this was Goa when it was first founded. You see it had a wall around it, one part of the city. And this is now Old Goa. It's different from the port where we're landing. It's about half an hour drive in from the new modern port. And this was its Portuguese seal, with the royal family seals in the blue, and then the wheel of the Dharma on the upper right side. Now that is a symbol you won't see there, but though what remains from the 450 years of Portuguese rule is the Portuguese-style buildings, and they're yellow and white. Sometimes they have cobblestone sidewalks like you get in Lisbon, a lot of vernacular houses, like this one, I believe, is on a tour, the Oliveros Fernandes house. And there's still some Portuguese-speaking Indians there, because the tradition was so long and strong that most of the old residents of Goa are Portuguese-speaking and Catholic, which is why they built the largest cathedral in Asia, the Sé in Portuguese, but the Santa Catarina Cathedral, which is, again, something to visit. There are actually quite a few Christians all through India, but most of them are in Bangalore and in Goa, where the majority are Christians. And one of the features of in Goa, it is the final resting place of St. Francis Xavier, who was the first Jesuit missionary that came out of Lisbon and was given a charter by the Pope to come and missionize all the way through Asia. And he went all the way to Japan, and he set up missions all through there. He died off of Macau on an outer island, and then his body was brought back to Goa, because this is where he established his first mission and wanted to have his tomb here. And it is in the Basilica de Bom Jesus, which I believe you'll get to go see if you're on one of the tours. And it's classical Portuguese-style basilica. It was given a bishop status, that's why it's called basilica. But it's most famous because it has the tomb of St. Francis Xavier, and there he is in this silver coffin, which every 10 years is brought down onto in front of the altar so people can get a good conversation with him. But he was credited with many, many miracles, and so he was one of the earliest Jesuits who was canonized as a saint, and I would bet that the current Pope Francis will come visit here soon, if not this week. You don't know, he travels faster than we do. Anyway, there are other things to see in Goa. This is a Shanta Durga temple dedicated to the wife of Shiva, who makes peace in the family, typically. And then there are other areas. It's not a very big city. This is a monument to the unity of Goa with the rest of India. So again, it's been decolonialized, but it still has this heritage. Then the main town there is called Panjim City, which is a commercial center and a lot of motorbikes, and not very big, but it's the center of Goan commerce. And I put this picture up because you see above the guys on the motorbike, it says Braganza Furniture Store. Well, the Braganzas are the Portuguese royal family, so that's, I guess, what they're doing these days. And then there's some modern architecture. Goa University, it sort of looks like a modernist, Buddhist architecture that evokes some of the great Mughal architecture, but it's an example of modern Indian architecture for better and for more curious. And then there's a blend of food in Goa, which is Portuguese Indian. So this is a style of fish with a curry, and there are Portuguese pastries and wine, and so you can go into the cafes and you think you're somewhere in Portugal, but it's very spicy, of course, as Indian food tends to be. Then every year for the Lenten festival, they have a carnival, which is called Churga Chittam in Hindi, but this is a painting I found of it, which just shows the sort of exuberance of the local people and their different cultures. So you see the lady on the left with her the red spot, that's a tika, it's called in Hindi, which means she's a married woman. Unmarried women have a spot in their hair, actually. And so I didn't get a picture of the actual festival. It's a pretty small carnival compared to Rio or other places, but it's an example of how kind of multicultural and enthusiastic you will find, not just in Goa, but the rest of India. And I'm going to leave you with this club that I came across, which started in Mumbai. Now they have branches around India, and it was started by a yogi master who considered yoga to be a little too solemn. And so he started what they call a laughing club, which I invite you to join, because what you do is you take what they call pranayama breathing exercise, where you inhale and exhale. You inhale and exhale. You can do this all day if you want, but inhale and exhale, and then you chuckle. Well, you can do that all day long too. Anyway, may you enjoy Mumbai and Goa and India, and my pleasure to laugh with you. Thank you very much.